Hamas human shields. And this comes as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to head to Qatar in efforts to resolve the conflict. What happens next and all the details, we'll get to latest on the show today.
Also on World DNA, ahead of the trade talks between New Delhi and Washington, which are scheduled to take place in New Delhi, White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro has said that India is coming to the table as trade talks are scheduled for today. But India's chief negotiator Rajesh Agarwal mentioned that this is not an official round of negotiations, but it'll definitely be a discussion. This is weeks after Trump imposed punitive tariffs on Indian exports. How the talks are scheduled to go, we'll bring you all the latest we have at this point. Let's start with the headlines.
Taiwan detects 24 Chinese military aircraft, 11 Navy vessels, and 6 official ships operating around its territory. Says 15 out of 24 sorties cross the median line and enter its air defense identification zone.
India and US will hold trade talks in New Delhi today, signaling a reversal in bilateral ties after weeks of criticism from US officials raising hopes for a breakthrough on a free trade agreement.
Donald Trump warned Hamas that all bets are off if it moves hostages above ground to use as human shields. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visiting Israel says war in Gaza can end if Hamas frees all hostages and surrenders.
Trump insists that Israel won't strike Qatar again after Netanyahu fails to rule out further strikes during a meeting with Marco Rubio. Arab and Muslim leaders called for a review of ties with Israel after emergency talks in Doha.
U.S. President signs orders sending National Guard troops to Memphis City, saying the task force would be a replica of one sent into Washington, D.C., vows to take similar action soon in Chicago.
We're going to go after the NGO network that foments, facilitates, and engages in violence. That's not okay. Violence is not okay in our system, and we want to make it less likely that that happens.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, guest hosting Charlie Kirk's podcast, criticized the far left for tolerating violence, says Trump administration would act against groups promoting political violence.
Well, we have proof. All you have to do is look at the cargo that was like it's spattered all over the ocean. Big bags of cocaine and fentanyl all over the place. And it was, plus we have recorded evidence that they were leaving.
The U.S. military carries out strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug cartel vessel heading to the United States. Second such strike against a suspected drug boat in recent weeks. Trump says 3 men were killed in the strike.
Ukrainian officials say 2 people killed and 9 others wounded in Russian strikes in Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv regions as Moscow presses forward with its over 3-year war despite Western condemnation.
In a breakthrough moment, U.S. and Chinese officials have reached a framework deal to transfer TikTok to U.S. control, with final approval expected in a Friday call between Presidents Trump and Xi, marking rare progress amid tense trade talks. President Donald Trump has warned Hamas to release all the hostages, stating that if they don't, it will be the end of them.
Now, Hamas has rejected Trump's proposal, even as Israel steps up its offensive across Gaza. Taking to social media platform Truth Social, Trump warned Hamas against moving the Israeli captives in Gaza above ground to use them as human shields and hinder Israel's military campaign, calling it a human atrocity. He renewed his calls for their release.
The comments come as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke alongside Netanyahu in Israel on Monday, saying the only way to end the war in Gaza would be for Hamas to free all hostages and surrender.
UN Special Reporter Francesca Albanese claims Israel's actions in Gaza amount to ethnic cleansing and genocide. She claimed that Israel was trying to make Gaza City unlivable.
Israel is bombing is destroying, including by using unconventional weapons that we've never seen before. It's trying to forcibly evacuate the 800,000 Palestinians who were seeking refuge there. But the question is, why? Why? Because this is the last piece of Gaza that needs to be rendered unlivable before advancing the ethnic cleansing of that piece of land. And then probably they will move to the West Bank.
On Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer held a video call to discuss a two-state solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this comes ahead of a meeting of world leaders on September 22nd along sidelines of the UNGA, where several countries are expected to formally recognize Palestine.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has stated that Israel's right-wing government cannot be a partner in regional stability, highlighting the need for a unified approach to resolving the conflict.
In light of Israel's continued aggression against Palestine and repeated attacks on Arab and Islamic countries, most recently Qatar, the extreme right-wing government in Israel cannot be a partner in security and stability in our region.
Now, displaced Palestinians are moving southwards along coastal roads near Nuseirat in the Gaza Strip due to renewed Israeli evacuation orders for Gaza City. Israel's military has intensified efforts to seize control of the city, urging residents to evacuate and demolishing high-rise buildings allegedly used by Hamas.
We have been displaced more than 20 times so far. We have become homeless. Where can I go with my children? My husband is in one area and my children and I are in another. We fled because of the intense bombing.
A top UN official, Tom Fletcher, has warned of a preventable, predictable famine in Gaza, urging Israel to allow unimpeded aid delivery. According to a global hunger monitor, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are at risk of famine, particularly in Gaza City, where Israel has launched a new offensive against Hamas.
It's a preventable, a predictable famine. But we can stop it. We need the crossings open. We need functional access. We need unimpeded safe passage inside Gaza. We need the looting to stop. We need the hostages to be released. We need a ceasefire now.
Now, to discuss more on the topic, we're being joined live by Asha Castleberry. She is the former Senior Advisor, Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs at U.S. State Department and foreign policy expert. It's really great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, let's begin with all that's happening. We have Israel that is continuing its attacks in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has attacked Hamas in Qatar. We have the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, going there and talking to Israeli officials. All this is happening, but what's happening on ground is the attacks, the humanitarian crisis that is happening. So according to you, what kind of diplomacy do you think is evolving in the situation? And Marco Rubio, he's going to Qatar. What kind of talks do you think would come out from those talks?
Well, it's evident that the security challenges that are happening in the field, mainly in Gaza, is outperforming the progress involved in diplomacy. There is diplomacy happening. It's evident with Secretary Rubio's visit to Israel. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is there's ongoing security challenges like the ethnic cleansing as well as the food insecurity issues that are happening. And now with regards to the offensive missions that are happening, and plus with the evacuations going on, we have this human shield issue. So, which I hope that's not happening, but for the most part, I would say that security challenges are definitely outperforming diplomacy.
Ms. Castleberry, and as you mentioned, security challenges, this is not something which has just started now, and it's not something which even started on the 7th of October 2023, this region, when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Hamas, at least since the last 2 years now. Is there any light at the end of this tunnel, if you see it in a macro way? Because there is no amount of ultimatums which seem to work on Hamas or Israel.
The only way we can see a light at the end of the tunnel is if we see significant political leadership changes happening, not only in the state of Israel, but also with the Palestinian Authority. One needs to be more in power while the other one needs to reform its decision making with regards to operations. So who knows in terms of how long it will take, but it definitely needs to be some sort of political leadership changes in order to see a significant change in terms of direction of this conflict.
Right, and you talked about the human shield, the topic that has come up. How much of a role will U.S. be playing, if at all, that actually happens? These hostages being used as human shields.
Well, according to the President of the United States, he pretty much has a lot of scrutiny in terms of that potentially happening. I'm pretty sure he's formulating a plan as far as countering that decision to actually make the Palestinians a human shield, which further deepens the focus on just human right violations or undergoing just significant security challenges that are just exacerbating the conditions there. It's already a bad situation with regards to the famine issue, and then also we have just ongoing casualties. But here we go, another situation where not only you could potentially become an IDP and you're not sure where you're going, but you have a potential to be used as a human shield as these offensive missions are happening. Further complicates the security environment.
I hear your point. Ms. Castleberry, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Pleasure speaking with you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's focus on West Asia a little further now. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has vowed to keep up maximum pressure on Iran to block its pursuit of a nuclear weapon.
Now, the commitment follows the June conflict when American and Israeli forces targeted Iran's nuclear sites.
Needs to happen, and we remain firmly committed, as I said to the president. And that's why the president continues with our campaign of maximum pressure. There will continue to be maximum economic pressure on Iran until they change course. That's why we are encouraged to see our partners in Europe begin the process of snapping back sanctions on Iran. They are clearly out of compliance with what was already a flawed deal to begin with. And we encourage them to continue down that road. We 100% support that. That is exactly what needs to happen.
This was a joint news conference with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Marco Rubio said that a nuclear-armed Iran under a radical Shia cleric with the capability to launch missiles far beyond its borders poses an unacceptable danger not only to Israel and the United States but to the entire world. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has repeatedly warned of the Iranian threat, led a war in June, lasted all of 12 days, in which Israeli forces struck both nuclear and conventional military targets and killed several of the top Iranian nuclear scientists there. The campaign coincided with President Trump's diplomatic efforts with Tehran, but he later changed course and ordered US bombers to hit key Iranian nuclear facilities.
Israeli president said President Trump's decision to strike Iran's nuclear facilities was not only a sound military move, but also a clear message to the world that the United States will defend its own interests and stand by its allies. Above all, Israel.
Iranian officials who describe the country's nuclear program as peaceful report that more than 1,000 people were killed during the 12-day conflict. Israeli authorities, meanwhile, say Iranian drones and missiles struck, and these strikes, they left at least 28 people dead in Israel.
The Russia-Ukraine war bill is staggering.
Ukraine says that it needs $172 million every single day to keep the fight on. But as the battle rages, the question is simple. Can Kiev hold out without the West? More in this next report.
The 3-year war is devouring resources at breakneck speed. Ukraine's defense ministry has revealed its military spending has soared to nearly $172 million per day. A figure Kyiv admits is impossible to sustain without Western support. The revelation comes as the fighting intensifies with each passing day. Ukrainian drones are striking deep into Russia, forcing the Kirishi oil refinery to halt a key processing unit. The attack cut into Moscow's energy chain, worth millions of US dollars, showing Kyiv's strategy to hit Russia's fuel supplies head-on. But Moscow is answering with fire. Russia claims to have expanded its foothold in Volchansk, while claiming to target 142 Ukrainian sites, from drone hubs to troop shelters. Moscow also claims Ukraine lost over 1,300 troops in the past 24 hours, although these figures can't be verified independently. Ukraine insists it struck a major blow, destroying a Buk M3 surface-to-air missile system. Buk M3 is one of Russia's most advanced shields against aircraft and missiles. If confirmed, losing such a system can dent Moscow's frontline protection. The war now rages on two fronts, the battlefield and the treasury. Kyiv's leaders warn they cannot bankroll this fight alone, without Western money and weapons. The daily burn of $172 million will cripple Ukraine's ability to hold the line. Russia, on the other hand, has deeper pockets and more men and machine, which it keeps deploying in the war. The battle is fierce, the spending colossal, and the outcome is increasingly tied to whether the West keeps writing checks. Kyiv continues to press its Western partners to put more pressure, more sanctions on Moscow, to limit its war chest. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Let's shift focus to the US now. The battle over the control in Washington, D.C. heats up as US President Trump threatens to declare a national emergency and place the city under full federal authority.
Now, his warning came after Mayor Muriel Bowser ordered city police to stop cooperating with immigration and customs enforcement. According to reports, the Democrat mayor made this decision amid allegations that ICE agents have been involved in racial profiling while detaining illegal suspects. Earlier this month, Mayor Bowser issued an executive order mandating coordination between local law enforcement and federal agencies, but explicitly excluded ICE.
Trump's statement has drawn accusations of federal overreach, with more than 2,000 troops already positioned in the capital under his command. US President claims under his administration, D.C. has transformed from one of the most dangerous cities in the US to one of the safest. And it happened just in a matter of a few weeks, is what Trump claims.
On August 11th, President Trump took control of Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department for 30 days and deployed federal officers across the city. Thousands of people took to the streets in protest of the decision, while Trump described the capital as booming with restaurants, stores, and businesses, claiming there is virtually no crime.
In a Truth Social post, Trump blamed Democrats for pressuring Bowser into rejecting cooperation with immigration authorities. He said altering support for ICE would cause crime to rise again.
Now, Democrats, including Mayor Bowser, have questioned President Trump's authority to extend his crime crackdown to other cities. And now this includes Los Angeles, where he deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines in June.
Bowser, who previously supported parts of Trump's enforcement strategy, now limits city coordination with federal agencies. By law, the president controls the National Guard in Washington, unlike in the states where governors hold authority.
Well, for now, it remains unclear if President Trump can declare another emergency takeover of Washington, D.C. on his own. He will need congressional approval to extend the first emergency, and Congress did not act to grant it. A toxic rush is underway in the pine-covered mountains of central Mexico.
Soaring global gold prices have triggered a mercury boom in the Sierra Gorda, a region celebrated for its biodiversity. Mercury prices have exploded from $20 a kilo 15 years ago to as high as $350 today. Each Coke bottle of liquid mercury is currently worth nearly $2,000. Mexico now produces 200 tons of mercury a year, second only to China.
Now, scores of it is trafficked to Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, where it fuels illegal gold mining in the Amazon. In July, Peruvian authorities seized a record 4 tons hiding in bags of gravel. But the boom comes with a toxic price. Many of the miners come from poor families, and they are exposed daily to mercury poisoning. Scientists have recorded sky-high levels in their bodies and the environment.
Furthermore, Parkinson's disease and other health issues have been linked to long-term exposure. The mines sit inside and around the Sierra Gorda Biosphere Reserve that is home to jaguars, military macaws, and the Mexican black bear. Environmentalists warn the toxic legacy could threaten hundreds of species.
Mercury is a substance that causes 100% neurological damage. It is a neurotoxic substance.
To get a kilo of mercury, I have to burn a ton of rocks from the sacks that the boys were taking out over there.
In 2017, Mexico signed a UN convention banning mercury mining with the deadline to close small mines by 2032. A fund was announced to help miners transition to other jobs, but locals say they have seen no support and cannot afford to walk away from the only work that pays.
As investors keep turning to gold in times of global uncertainty, demand for mercury is only expected to grow. For now, Mexico's hidden mines keep supplying the world at a devastating cost to both people and the planet. In London, parents have been sentenced to long prison terms after their newborn died while they tried to avoid social services.
Well, Constance Martin and Mark Gordon have each been jailed for 14 years after being found guilty for the manslaughter of their daughter. In late 2022, the couple went into hiding in a tent after losing custody of their 4 children. Martin secretly gave birth to a baby girl named Victoria, who later died. Their attempt to stay off-grid set off a nationwide search that began when police discovered a placenta in their burnt-out and abandoned car. The couple was finally arrested in Brighton on February 2023, but refused to reveal the baby's whereabouts.
Later, officers discovered the baby's decomposed body in a shopping bag hidden under garbage in a garden shed. Prosecutors say the infant likely died from hypothermia or suffocation, and at their retrial this year, the jury found them guilty of gross negligence manslaughter. In an earlier trial, they were also convicted of child cruelty, concealing a birth, and perverting the course of justice. During sentencing, the judge called their behavior reckless and selfish. Gordon, who previously served more than 20 years in prison in the US for rape, received an extra 4 years to be served on license.
21:45, and you are further under arrest for concealment of the birth of a child on the 4th of the 1st, 2023.
Generation Z is speaking up louder and more resolutely about mental health.
There's a new survey now which reveals that majority of Gen Z faces emotional struggles and mental duress, and women in Gen Z bearing the brunt of this mental health crisis the most. Nearly 2/3 of young people aged anywhere between 16 and 25 say that they have experienced a mental health problem. This is according to a recent YouGov survey. The findings reveal an unsettling truth. Emotional well-being issues have become a norm.
But there is a sharp divide. Women are far more likely than men to report struggles with their mental health. An overwhelming 35% of Gen Z women say they endure poor mental health compared to just 21% of men. Now, this gender gap marks the widest divide seen among all age groups, spotlighting unique pressures women face today.
Experts link this rising struggle to a toxic mix of social media pressures, economic uncertainty, and a future clouded by global crises. According to the survey, Gen Z spends an average of more than 6 hours daily on their phones, with many admitting addiction to social platforms that fuel anxiety through relentless comparison.
Financial worries weigh heavily, with almost half of young adults feeling financially insecure. While still there is resilience, Gen Z are actively seeking help, normalizing therapy and self-care more than previous generations. Around 42% report going to therapy, and 68% have taken breaks from social media to protect their mental health. Well, now it's time for a very short break on World DNA. We'll be back with more news and updates, starting with India and the United States, who are set to hold trade talks in New Delhi. Today, the talks mark a turnaround in bilateral ties after weeks of U.S. criticism. We'll get you all the details on that on the other side.
US and Chinese officials reached a framework deal for keeping TikTok running in America. More details on that as well on the other side. Stay tuned. This is World DNA. Come right back.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA. with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headline.
United Kingdom will deploy fighter jets to Poland as part of NATO operation to defend eastern flank following Russian drone incursions. RAF Typhoons will begin air defense missions in coming days.
Taiwan detects 24 Chinese military aircraft, 11 Navy vessels and 6 official ships operating around its territory. Says 15 out of 24 sorties cross the median line and enter its air defense identification zone.
India and US will hold trade talks in New Delhi today, signaling a reversal in bilateral ties after weeks of criticism from US officials, raising hopes for a breakthrough on a free trade agreement.
Donald Trump warns Hamas that all bets are off if it moves hostages above ground to use as human shields. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visiting Israel says war in Gaza can end if Hamas frees all the hostages and surrenders.
Trump insists that Israel won't strike Qatar again after Netanyahu fails to rule out further strikes during a meeting with Marco Rubio. Arab and Muslim leaders call for a review of ties with Israel after emergency talks in Doha.
US President signs order sending National Guard troops to Memphis City, saying the task force would be a replica of one sent into Washington, D.C., vows to take similar action soon in Chicago.
Well, we have proof. All you have to do is look at the cargo that was like it's spattered all over the ocean. Big bags of cocaine and fentanyl all over the place. And it was, plus we have recorded evidence that they were leaving.
U.S. military carries out strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug cartel vessel heading to the United States. Second such strike against a suspected drug boat in recent weeks. Trump says 3 men were killed in the strike.
In a breakthrough moment, US and Chinese officials have reached a framework deal to transfer TikTok to US control, with final approval expected in a Friday call between Presidents Trump and Xi, marking rare progress and this is amid tense trade talks.
NFL legend Tom Brady is coming back to the field. The 7-time Super Bowl winner, who retired in 2023, will play in a flag football event in Saudi Arabia in March.
India and the US, they are set to hold trade talks in New Delhi today.
India's chief negotiator and special commerce secretary Rajesh Agrawal confirmed on Monday that U.S. chief negotiator Brendan Lynch is visiting India for the discussions. Both sides are in a positive frame of mind on trade issues. The talks mark a turnaround in bilateral ties after weeks of U.S. criticism, reviving hopes for progress on a free trade agreement that had been derailed by tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump over India's purchase of Russian oil.
Today's meeting could set the stage for the 6th round of trade talks, originally planned for August 25th in New Delhi, but postponed after President Trump imposed a 25% punitive tariff on India on the 7th of August. along with a 25% reciprocal tariff, among the steepest duties faced by any US trading partner. An additional levy linked to India's purchase of Russian crude oil took effect on the 27th of last month.
Now, meanwhile, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said he believes India is now ready to engage on trade. He also suggested that talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi could help resolve the differences.
Are they the worst? You call them the Maharaja of tariffs?
The Maharaja of tariffs. But, Joe, the Modi, Prime Minister Modi sent out a very conciliatory, nice, constructive tweet, whatever they do in India. And President Trump responded to that. We'll see that. This is how this works. But as a practical matter, we know that on the trade side, they have the highest tariffs of any major country. They have very high non-tariff barriers. We had to deal with that like we're dealing with every other country that does that. And by the way, there's this issue of India buying Russian oil, which it never did. You understand this?
It never did. I didn't realize that
before 2020.
And to give us more details, our correspondent Susan Terani sent us this report from New York. Listen in.
The U.S.'s Assistant Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, Brendan Lynch, arrived in India to kick off negotiations on a bilateral trade agreement aimed to seal an interim trade deal by October-November. Key sticking points include U.S. demand to open India's agricultural and dairy sectors, which is considered sensitive for India. The efforts follow heightened tensions after Washington imposed sweeping tariffs on Indian goods, citing India's Russian oil import. Meanwhile, both governments have signaled a political thaw with cordial public exchanges between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Susan Terani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, let's shift our focus now. The Tibetan parliament in exile is moving to formalize the national flag, a symbol of the Tibetan freedom struggle.
For the first time, leaders in Dharamshala are preparing to set official standards on its dimensions, colors and design. In Dharamshala, the seat of the Tibetan government in exile, lawmakers are taking a defining step to standardize the Tibetan national flag, the iconic flag that is long seen as a symbol of freedom and resistance against Chinese rule has never been officially standardized.
Deputy Speaker Dolma Sering said the flag has never been formally recognized or regulated by a Tibetan Secretariat. She stressed that a select committee has been tasked with creating clear rules on the flags. The process will be completed in the ongoing parliamentary session. The standardization move is expected to give the flag in the freedom movement. It represents a common single identity. The 10th session of the 17th Parliament in exile began in Dharamshala on September 10th and will be in session until September 18th.
The flag will be printed and published and, shared around the world with one flag. So that when we have marches and protests, it has become fashionable and patriotic thing to do. For example, wearing a, flag, you carry flag, it has to be the same design. So that is the standardization of one Tibetan flag for everybody.
Son of jailed media tycoon Jimmy Lai is in London, urging the UK government to help secure his father's release.
Now, Sebastian Lai, standing outside UK Prime Minister's residence, said that his father's health had deteriorated in prison. He urged Keir Starmer and U.S. President Donald Trump to push for his father's release.
If the beliefs of freedom, of democracy, of free press, of courage, is something that the Prime Minister aligns with, which I believe it is, I think, it's about putting actions behind word and meeting the family and saying that this is an exemplar British citizen. And we're going to do all we can to free him.
Jimmy Lai, Hong Kong's pro-democracy media mogul, has been under arrest since 2020 when China passed the contentious security law. A fierce critic of China, Lai's tabloid called Apple Daily was shut down by Beijing at the height of the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong.
Jimmy Lai's health has deteriorated in the recent past. The 77-year-old's national security trial ended 2 weeks ago, but the court is yet to set a date to deliver the verdict. While the media tycoon is facing an unprecedented legal battle since the past 5 years, his criticism of China is not new.
Lai was known as one of the few members of Hong Kong's business elite to criticize the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, which took control of Hong Kong in 1997. Lai has been openly supportive of the democracy movement for decades, but after Beijing's draconian law was passed in Hong Kong, the media mogul faces charges of criminalizing secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces.
Also, you have the real time, like.
While the Pacific is heating up, America's Typhon missile system has landed in Japan.
And with it, Asia's arms race just got sharper, faster, and more dangerous. The United States has quietly rolled out its Typhon missile system on Japanese soil, a weapon designed to strike fast, far, and with precision. The missile has been deployed temporarily during the annual Resolute Dragon exercise. The 2-week drill involves 20,000 Japanese and US troops, along with warships and missile batteries.
Now, the move sends shockwaves across Asia. The Typhon is land-based launcher, can launch Tomahawk cruise missiles and SM-6 interceptors capable of hitting ships, aircraft, and land targets hundreds of miles away. It has enough range to strike China's eastern seaboard or parts of Russia from Japan.
So we continuously train against multiple threats for our ADI series, but it's adversary agnostic. And so we train against the capabilities that this system is designed to go against. Aerial access, aerial denial systems is what we train against. We work through those in both a competitive environment, a constructive environment, and then deploying the system in a real tactical scenario. And that's what we train against.
The system can move by road, be set up in hours, and rain down firepower without warning. Analysts say it shrinks the response time in any conflict and pushes the region closer to a hair-trigger environment. For Washington and Tokyo, it's about deterrence. For rivals in Beijing and Pyongyang, it's escalation.
China always firmly opposes the US deploying the Typhon intermediate range missile system in Asian countries. Deploying the intermediate range missile system in Japan will further harm other countries' legitimate security interests and pose a substantial threat to strategic security in the region.
And Japan, already pouring billions of US dollars into defense, now stands at the front line of the great power contest. The Typhon, mobile and lethal, plugs into America's wider Indo-Pacific strategy, encircling China's growing naval might and checking North Korea's unpredictable missile tests.
US and Chinese officials reached a framework deal for keeping TikTok running in America.
Now, this paved the way for the direct engagement between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping for the first time since June. After the agreement, Trump, in a social media post, said, "I will be speaking to President Xi on Friday. The relationship remains a very strong one." Referring to the meeting in Spain, Trump added that the session has, quote-unquote, gone very well.
Separately, Trump told reporters that there was no decision yet on whether Beijing would continue to have a stake in the new venture. But he said the TikTok negotiations can maybe even bring US closer to China. Trump hinted that he would pursue a wider trade deal in his talks with Xi Jinping.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said a framework to keep ByteDance's TikTok app running in the U.S. had been reached. Bessent added that the threat of allowing the social media app TikTok to go dark in the U.S. was what ultimately sealed a framework deal in Madrid.
We have a framework for a TikTok deal. The two leaders, President Trump and Party Chair Xi, will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok. The getting to this framework was made possible by President Trump and the high regard that President Trump has for Party Chair Xi. So when the leaders have mutual respect, then the delegations have mutual respect. And as Ambassador Greer said, we were in substantial contact with President Trump last night and then again today.
China's Vice Commerce Minister Li Chenggang said that a framework of consensus had been reached on TikTok.
But he, of course, cautioned that Beijing won't sacrifice principles for a deal. Listen to this.
During this meeting, both sides engaged in candid and in-depth exchanges regarding TikTok and China's relevant concerns. They reached a basic framework consensus on cooperatively resolving relevant issues such as TikTok, reducing investment barriers, and promoting relevant economic and trade cooperation. The U.S. side has generalized national security concerns and continuously expanded its sanctions list against Chinese entities. Its long-arm jurisdiction has reached deeper and further. This is a typical act of unilateral bullying, which violates international law and the basic norms of international relations. China firmly opposes this and raised serious concerns with the U.S. side during the talks.
However, the terms of the TikTok blueprint remain unclear.
We had very good discussions. We preferred to keep the discussions on TikTok. We will be holding trade negotiations in about a month, again, at a different location. But we talked about many things that we might do in the future. I'm not going to talk about the commercial terms of the deal. It's between two private parties, but the commercial terms have been agreed upon.
While Besson credited Trump's TikTok play, a Bloomberg report quoting a U.S. official showed the broader framework on TikTok was essential for Trump and Xi Jinping to have their first in-person meeting later this year. The recent comments from China also indicated TikTok was at the center of the discussions as the time was ticking for the app. With the September 17th deadline fast approaching, it's nearly here. Officials from both sides will continue to hold discussions for a broader trade agreement, which Trump says, frankly, more importantly, a big deal.
We were very focused on TikTok and making sure that it was a deal that is fair for the Chinese and completely respects U.S. national security concerns. And that's the deal we reached. And of course, we want to ensure that the Chinese have a fair investment environment in the United States, but always that U.S. national security comes first.
The International Cricket Council is reportedly set to reject Pakistan Cricket Board's demand to remove Andy Pycroft from the panel of Asia Cup match referees.
Well, this comes after the PCB accused him of violating the code of conduct during their match against India. Pakistan alleged that Pycroft told Captain Salman Agha not to shake hands with India skipper Surya Kumar Yadav before the game.
Taking to social media, PCB chairman Mohsin Naqvi, who is also the Asian Cricket Council chief, wrote, I quote him here, the PCB has lodged a complaint with the ICC regarding violations of the match referee of the ICC Code of Conduct and the MCC laws pertaining to the spirit of cricket.
The Asia Cup comes under the purview of the Asian Cricket Council, and the ICC has no organizational role in the tournament, but match officials are allocated by the global governing body. Hence, withdrawing a match referee would require ICC involvement, as well as BCCIs, who are the official hosts of this year's tournament.
Indian captain Surya Kumar Yadav, who had earlier faced criticism for shaking hands with his Pakistan counterpart after last week's captain's press conference, did not shake hands during the toss. In fact, there was hardly any eye contact between the two captains, as noticed.
And well, after that, the comprehensive win, the Indian team refused to shake hands with Pakistan or share other pleasantries. The players left the dugout and headed straight into the dressing room. Well, that did not bode well with Pakistan or their head coach, Mike Hesson. And as a mark of protest, Pakistan did not send Captain Agha for post-match duties.
Well, look, obviously we were ready to shake hands at the end of the game. We obviously were disappointed that our opposition didn't do that. We sort of went over there to shake hands, and they'd already gone into the changing room. So that was a disappointing way, obviously, for the match to finish. And a match that we were disappointed the way we played, but certainly we're willing to go and shake hands.
Now, later on, Pakistan also lodged a protest with the Asian Cricket Council over the Indian players' behavior, labeling it unsporting and escalating the tension between the two sides. But the Indian captain stood firm and justified the decision to not shake hands with the opposition.
Few things in life are ahead of sportsman spirit also. And I've already answered it. I've told it at the presentation as well that we actually stand with all the victims of Pahalgam terror attack, and we stand with their families, also express our solidarity. Also, as I said at PC, that we dedicate this win to our brave armed forces who took part in Operation Sindoor, and as they continue to inspire us all, we'll try our best whenever given an opportunity.
Designer Christian Siriano channels old Hollywood with a modern edge at his Summer Spring 2026 show. More about it in the next report. Take a look.
I'm kind of looking for escapism right now. So like when you walk in this room, you really feel like you're somewhere else. I mean, we're at Macy's, which is so cool. And it's like, feels like you're back in an old department store watching a salon style show, which I love.
And with that, we call a wrap to World DNA for today. And before we wrap up, let's take a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned. You're watching Beyond Political.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.